we need to talk about AI art. I'm already aware I'm probably going to lose some followers and subscribers over this. However, I have some good things to say, so please stick around to the end. But I think there's a lot of people who are misinformed, and I think there's a lot of people who are choosing to be ignorant. So I'm asking you, please don't be that person. I wasn't going to take, a side on this, because it is a highly controversial topic. But the more research that I do, the more I feel like I need to say something. I know this is not part of my normal content, and I don't plan on making a ton of it, but it's just something that I need to get out. I literally have not been able to post anything else because this is just looming over my head. So this is as much to educate my followers as well as mentally free me up to make other things. Okay, so there are some absolutely amazing merits to AI art. I actually love the idea of it. And I look forward to a time when I can consciously use it. But at this time, I feel like we need to look at the whole picture. So first of all, what is AI art? How does it work? So basically, you have a generator and you can input a prompt of sorts. I found that the more detailed that you get with your prompts, the more, I guess, a better result that you will get. And then it will either produce an image or produce a series of images in which you can select like which one is closer to what you're going for, and it'll continue to refine until you reach a point where you're satisfied, or until the machine has reached its limitations. So how does this work? Kind of in a very brief nutshell, it scrapes the internet for hundreds, thousands of images, and then it will use the descriptions or the alt text for those images to try to fit the prompt that you are going for. Now, this is where things get a little bit sketchy. How does it use those images? I keep hearing this phrase across the board that it is training the models, and each generator has its own unique sequence on how it applies those images. But it's not like someone just took all of these images and then cut them out and pasted them in Photoshop. It's not photo bashing. It is a complicated process, so I'm going to link a video in the description that goes much more in depth with it. I'm just going to give you kind of an overview of what that process might look like. Everything, all my resources will be in the description. But in very basic terms, if you can imagine, every single colored pixel in an image has a numerical value. And then this computer model studies these groups of pixels to identify what an object is. So it's a complex mathematical equation that analyzes like a pool of photos based on what you type in the prompt. It then goes through a process called diffusion, where it takes these learned pixel clumps and it builds upon it to the point where a prompt can produce different images than what it started with. It is truly a miraculous tool that developers have created. It's mind-boggling. I've played with it, and it's a crazy amount of fun. And I can see so many applications for it. So it can reduce the workload on concept artists and illustrators. So if they're able to cut out more of the mundane tasks and then focus on what they really excel at. It can lower the cost of manpower, like for video game developers in need of just a ton of art for different scenes, especially if they're working on a shorter deadline. It's also a really great way to provide affordable, customized art for people in need who can't afford to hire an individual artist. However, I'm going to be bold with this. At this time, I don't believe it should be used for commercial purposes. And here's why. There's a company called Stable Diffusion that collected a pool of images and enter in the issues of copyright permissions. Now, it's obvious I can't take those images and resell them, claim them as my own, things like that. But like there is something called fair use where like if it is beyond recognizable, then can you really say, well, this is copied from this source, you have no proof. But how far does fair use actually go? Obviously, these AI art generators, they're not copying the images. They're not using exact clusters of pixels to create their images. It is, in a sense, learning. But this is not always the case. It is very dependent on what that person would put in the search engine, which means depending on what a person inputs, they could be intentionally trying to rip off a copyrighted image, and at this point, there are no boundaries. And let's be honest, there's so much art out there, so you could be entering something into that search box that yields something that isn't as unique as you might think it should be. I have heard this argument over and over again. Well, artists use other artists' work for inspiration, they learn from each other all the time. I use mood boards. So while I can understand the argument, I'm not capable of mathematically breaking down an image to the pixel clumps and looking for patterns. That's not something that my brain is capable of doing at the accuracy or the speed of a machine. So even when I do use the influence of other images, I'm still pulling a lot based on my own creativity. There's oftentimes still an image in my head that I am trying to create. So I might like the choice of lighting on something, the pose of a hand, a facial structure, a nose, the size of the eyes, costume choices on a particular fold of fabric, things like that. Now here is a subject where I cannot compromise. So when a person puts in a prompt, they make their description, and they input a specific style of a particular artist. And most of us had to pay for some form of education or training. Education's not free. Even with all the free training on YouTube, you'll either pay for the time spent to learn that skill, or you will pay money to learn the shortcut. And even if you do find free education that is quality, it is of the choice of the teacher to opt in to that education to provide it for free. And if you happen to find somebody's videos that were meant to be paid for, but you get access for free, guess what? It's stealing. So when you look at a person's artwork and you can immediately recognize who made that artwork, it becomes a signature. Even among the art community, if I do a style study and I'm actively trying to replicate somebody's style, you can bet that when I post that online, I am going to say in my description, I studied this artist. But now you have a computer that through a prompt is analyzing, mapping, and replicating the style as close as possible. And these artists receive 0 credit, 0 royalties, and 0 option to opt out. You will find that most artists are pleased to inspire other artists in their creativity, as long as they're not trying to immediately replicate for the point of claiming it as their own or trying to make a profit. And even if I could mimic a style and produce something in under a minute for free, I would still be expected to ethically source and pay for any resources that I would have used in that image, no matter how visible or not visible it was. I could do exactly the same thing that these AI art generators are doing. It would take me longer, but I could do a similar thing. But I would still be expected to source those images ethically. Okay, so maybe you're saying, it's highly unlikely that it would come up with a recognizable image. What are the odds? Don't think it's a big deal. I'm going to present something to you. So there's different types of generators, and some where you can put in a base image and then decide how much you want that altered. As far as I know, there's still no restriction on any of these generators on what you can use commercially. If there is, it's not stopping anyone from claiming it as their own and redistributing. So I'm going to show you an image here. And when I saw this image, I knew 2 things. I knew it was AI generated, and I knew where the original had come from. So remember what I was saying about an artist's style being recognizable? So if you have seen paintings by Terry Redlin or Norman Rockwell, you can pick those out. It is a signature. I recognized this original piece from DeviantArt, something I had favorited over 10 years ago. Instantly, I recognized it. Now, this image was first submitted in 2012. Now, this particular artist has already been a victim of art theft, which leads me to another question. Do these generators compensate for duplicates. This piece of artwork was published in 2012, and it has been stolen and used in many diamond paintings, desktop wallpapers, posters, because a lot of companies will steal popular artwork and just use it. That's what happens. So this has been going on for years, but how many times will this particular image pop up in the database? And how much does that factor into having a heavier influence on the end product? And it's not just this generator either. The beloved Midjourney produced this image. It depends so much on what you put in that prompt box. I instantly recognized this from the cover of a National Geographic that I saw when I was a kid. And it's not just big creators that are being affected by this. So you can actually do an image search for any of your artwork to see if it has been used at haveibeentrained.com. My artwork has been used. And don't give me the terms of service excuse. It wasn't taken from my Instagram. It wasn't taken from Pinterest. It wasn't taken from Twitter. Most of the images on my personal art website have been scraped and used in these generators. And I'm not that big of an artist, and there's probably a lot of people who don't even realize that their artwork is being used. So I'm gonna just show you really quick how haveibeentrained.com actually works. So these are images from my own website, and I can do an image search, and it'll show me it's a Google image match, basically. So to show if any of these images are actually popping up in the database. And you can see, just as I put these different images from my website in the search engine, sometimes there's one instance, sometimes there's more of them, which kind of confirms my suspicion that sometimes the same images is put in more than once and could have a heavier weight on the final result. So do I have an initial problem with people using it as a creative outlet? Maybe not, but as soon as you try to sell it as your own artwork or you try to publish it, that's where it becomes a bit of a gray area for me, especially when some of these generators are used for profit, but they didn't actually purchase or acquire permission to the assets they're using to educate or train their models. So if you're not an artist and you're not active in the community, you're not likely going to be able to recognize whether or not the generated image is heavily influenced by the source images. And no offense, but if you are not in the industry long enough to understand the mutual respect that most artists have for one another, there's knowing the boundaries between copying and influencing. Not to say that artists never copy, because it happens. It happens everywhere. But even if they do, they usually never survive long enough because they aren't actually cultivating their own skills. Or if plagiarism comes from a bigger company or industry, they get shut down so fast. People lose respect. Now, if you're wondering, why are all these artists so negative about this new medium? It's because we've been trained to spot art theft. Now, here's the kicker of it all. It's not just artists that are seeing the problems, that are seeing the red flags. Some of these companies have already admitted to the problem. So the same process used for creating visual art is now being used to create audio and music files. But look at how they're approaching it. Okay, so this article will be posted in the description as well, but listen to this statement from Dance Diffusion. Dance Diffusion is also built on datasets composed entirely of copyright-free and voluntarily provided music and audio samples, because diffusion models are prone to memorization and overfitting. Releasing a model trained on copyrighted data could potentially result in legal issues. In honoring the intellectual property of artists while also complying to the best of their ability with the often strict copyright standards of the music industry, keeping any kind of copyrighted material out of training was a must. Okay, you heard it. They're already admitting that it's prone to flaws. They're going to tread more carefully with the music industry, because if you notice, if you have even like a 10-second clip of music on a YouTube video, boom, you get a copyright strike almost instantly. Now, if I decide to hire a physical trainer, for example, for his knowledge, and I still have to put in my own effort, my own work, because I will admit, these generators are not easy to learn. Sometimes you can be sitting there for 1, 2, 3 hours and still not get what you're looking for. Even that, if I put in all of the sweat equity to get in shape and actively follow those guidelines, just because I did most of the work myself, that doesn't mean that I don't pay for the knowledge from someone to help me learn it faster. So we're at an impasse. And a lot of these companies are of the opinion, oops, we messed up, but now everybody has access to it. Bummer. So we've discussed some of the potential ethics that might arise. Understand that I don't fault anyone for their curiosity or even the motivation for using it on a creative project. I won't even deny that a lot of people have put in a lot of effort to learn how to use these generators. And it's not my intention to shame anyone, but I want to bring awareness to this subject. Hiring an artist can be expensive. I get it. And I am a cheap person. If I found something that could produce a stunning book cover that could compete with what artists have been doing for years, and it was only a couple dollars, you bet I would look into it. If you are on a budget, you would be a fool not to at least consider something of this nature. And some of the AI art that is coming out is absolutely stunning. My husband was actually favoriting pieces on Pinterest and saving them, and he didn't even know they were AI art. Okay, you can't afford it. I get it. However, what about this book cover that came out that is from a highly popular book series? Someone who definitely could have afforded to hire an artist. I'm going to be very raw with you for a moment because I was not expecting it to affect me the way it did. And I don't want to bring emotions into this because I feel like some people will tap out as soon as emotions are involved. But I had just completed a book cover for an author, and it was an amazing collaborative experience. She was happy with the cover. I was happy with the cover. It was fantastic. And then someone showed me an AI book cover, and I was this close to quitting completely. I mean, in the end, the hours that I put in didn't even add up to half minimum wage of what I got paid. And I saw this AI art piece that took a couple hours, or maybe 3 or 4 tops if you want to include post-editing. I have spent over 20 years perfecting my skills and refining them. And I couldn't even compete with the level that this cover was on, because this AI model had taken artwork from hundreds of artists that had probably been training longer than I have, and then it lumps them all together, and I can't compete with that. That became my competition. An AI generator gets to skip the step of working through the self-doubt. It skips the trusting the process, the embracing the suck. It skips the artistic choices of a human. Yes, the person inputting the prompt can make choices to word things differently, but it's not quite the same. And as this technology gets smarter, it's going to get harder and harder to compete with the price, the time, the style, and even quality. The only thing I have going for me is that I am a human in a community. But I just became a small fish in a smaller pond full of big fish. So have you tried one of these AI art generators? Do you love it? Do you hate it? Going to continue to use it? I would ask you to consider this simple statement. Yesterday it was visual art. Today it's music. What's tomorrow? Is it creative writing? Is it videography? Anything that can be recreated in a digital format is in danger of being replaced. And we can all find our reasons for justifying what we do now, but tomorrow it could be affecting you. I feel like the art community kind of got stabbed in the back, because I think it blindsided a lot of us. We kind of just assumed this was going to be another machine that produced wonky results, and nothing could ever really replace human input. I don't think we understood what these machines were capable of. And I know following the backlash from a lot of artists, these developers have begun treading more carefully with the assets that they sample from, but it's already too late. So this has been weighing on me for a couple months, and I just wanted to get it out there. Thank you to the people out there who have given me a chance to share my skills and make it fun. I love the collaboration effort that goes into making someone's vision come to life. I love when people see my art and they go, wow, that's exactly what I was thinking of, or that wasn't what I was thinking, but it's even better. And I love seeing people look at my artwork and take their own twist on it and make it their own. I don't love seeing people taken advantage of. Sam Does Art has millions of followers, and if you look through his Instagram from the very beginning and see the progression of his style, it's no wonder. And people are sampling his work with zero intention of any sort of respect and claiming it as their own. This is not okay. And for all of you that are trying to use these generators responsibly, great work. Please keep it up. And keep encouraging others to do the same, or it may not be available to you much longer. And for those people saying it's a tool, it's a new medium, it's given me so much freedom to create, I'm sorry, but it lost that credibility when they chose to pull from copyrighted images and intellectual property. And I hope that it wouldn't be recognizable in the final render, but you don't know. It's flawed. Again, I'm not pointing fingers, I'm not naming names. I wanted so badly to love this thing. I wanted to be open-minded. The fact that people with no or limited artistic abilities can bridge the gap and see what's in their heads. I love it when people can have something and just bring it to life. And I think it has the potential to save an insane amount of time and money. And I think in time I could accept it as a new medium, the way photography was once new and scary, digital drawing, photo bashing. But after doing the research and the way it is affecting artists who are still trying to form a career, I can't support it. Not with the system that is currently in place. And I've seen many of the images in these data sets. You have images of traditional artists, digital artists, photographers. Some of them even have huge watermarks across them, like from websites where it's like the point of these websites is that you get paid for the use of your images. And I would be willing to change my position if they actually gave people the opportunity to opt out, but I don't see anybody changing their mind anytime soon. Because let's face it, if we allow artists to opt out, the quality of what's coming out of these generators will drop drastically. So if you are wanting to continue using these generators, here's some things that I would suggest that you take to heart. First, be transparent about your process. If you want to claim it as a medium, tell people. Don't let people just blindly assume that you drew it as a digital drawing, because that's dishonest. Tell people what generator you use. Talk about your process. I know that people are like possessive over the particular string of words that they use to create whatever said artwork. Fine, whatever. But you'll find that a lot of artists will post what program they used, how long it took, and any sort of medium that went into it when they post something online. Not everybody, but a lot of them do. Second, try to add your own personal touch to it. A good friend of mine created a cover for his book using a generator, but he actually photo bashed several renderings. He put his own twist on it, he put his own creative mind into it. I love that. I still have my reservations on it, but at least add your own artistry into it. And finally, this is my biggest issue. If an artist is still living, especially if they are actively giving back to the community, trying to produce content that people enjoy, do not put their name in the prompt. Suddenly, that pool of images that you're pulling from is heavily weighted, and you have no idea how many of their artworks are going into that generator. Is it affecting 2% of the images that went into your rendering, or is it more? Is it up to 50%? You don't know. I also want to thank Carla Ortiz on Twitter for the massive amounts of research and work that she has put into showing people what is going into these generators. Did AI steal my artwork? And to that question, I don't really know that I can really give an answer 100%. If I had to give an answer, I would say no, people stole it and put it in a database. Is it something that would hold up in a court of law? Probably not. It's already done. So we're all going to have to find ways to adapt no matter what. It just got a little bit harder. Things happen, we adapt, but I don't think it's as black and white as some people want to believe. I'm going to link a final video in the description from Jake Parker. So if you're an artist and you are struggling with this whole movement of AI art, he's got some great things to say. I am sorry to my faithful audience. I have a list of videos that should have come before this one, but for my own sanity, I had to prioritize it. Thank you for listening, peeps, and I will see you in the next video.